Thursday WarRoom, recorded Thursday, January 10th, 2013, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Thursday WarRoom again. We appreciate you listening to us. This is week 10 of our show. We want to apologize. We had a little glitch last week. We couldn't get a show on the air, but we're back up and running, so we hope you enjoyed this show, and we're sorry we lost you last week. But we got to get things started here tonight. We don't have any questions to cover this week. If you do have some, please send them to us. We're always looking for questions to answer. But we got a lot of news to get to before we get into our show. One of the first things I want to do, introduce a guy that's always on the show with me, Greg. How you doing, Greg?
I'm all right today. Yeah, I'm feeling froggy, so I'm gonna jump into a lot of this stuff that we're talking about today.
Yeah, we got a lot to get through. You guys will notice there's just two of us on the show tonight, and it's probably going to be that way from here on out. But we're going to make it work, and we hope you enjoy it. Here we go. First thing I want to do, Greg. There's been so much going on, on the sports news lately, especially today. A bunch of stuff hit the wire. First thing I want to do is send out. College football's over. I want to say congrats to the University of Alabama and Nick Saban winning another national title. Brian Kelly and them fell a little bit short. I don't know if they were ready to jump into that hornet's nest or not. It was.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's more to talk about about what happened after the game than actually in the game. The game itself. A lot of people from the South predicted that was going to be a blowout, and that's exactly what it was. Notre Dame did the best they could, but the reality is when you don't train against that speed, when you don't have that speed on your practice squad, you're not going to be able to get it done against an Alabama. And yes, Alabama lost to Texas A&M, and I understand that. They had trouble with the mobile quarterback, but when you really look at what they did, you give Saban 41, 40, whatever it was, days to prepare for a game like that, you're going to have trouble.
Well, that's always with Saban. And I think the whole team was prepared. They came out there like they, were fired from a gun. They played well at every aspect of the game. I mean, they even looked good running onto the field.
Let me ask you this. Think about what Notre Dame was thinking. Nobody's run on them all year. They've had only 2 100 rushing yard running backs all year. And Notre Dame and Alabama goes straight down the field and gets a touchdown.
Every time they touched the ball.
You had to be. What do you think Notre Dame was thinking, sitting on the sideline saying, okay, that's just a tough blow, because they've never seen their team handled like that.
Do you think they actually went off the field after the first series and done what a lot of teams tend to do? All right, that was scripted. They put their best plays in. They practiced that for 40-some days. Or did they go off the field and say, oh, my God, we haven't seen nothing like this? Not just this year. Them kids have been playing with Notre Dame for 4 years now. They haven't seen it yet. That was like running into a freight train or a Mack truck, whatever. I mean, it was devastating. I feel bad for Notre Dame maybe not being – I'm not going to say they weren't prepared. I'm sure they spent 40 days preparing, but they weren't prepared for an Alabama team.
They didn't have the personnel to match up. Alabama's plan was simple. We're going to do what we do. Look at the tape. You know what's coming.
And they couldn't stop it.
If you got the athletes and you got the pride to stop it, go ahead and get it. Now, they had the energy, but everyone's talking about this Manti Taylor runner-up. Where was he? Did he even play?
That's what I asked. And somebody, and a lot of your sports guys actually thought that Notre Dame's front 5 or 7 were going to match up well with Alabama. Match up. They were beaten up and thrown around. The offensive line for Alabama was just devastating.
Here's the difference in the two programs, and then we will kill this subject. Fourth quarter, the center and McCarron on Alabama's team, who are roommates, got into a tiff when they were clearly going to win the game.
Yeah.
Because their job is to focus on excellence each play. You never saw the passion. You never saw another maybe that's not the Notre Dame way. You never saw another Notre Dame person, teammate, whatever, get in someone else's face such that the camera caught it. And maybe that says a little something about their passion and their commitment to excellence. Not that they don't have it, but it's just not that level of Alabama who has to play the schedule that they do. Yep. And I'm not saying that Notre Dame didn't go into tough circumstances and didn't pull it out. But what I am saying is that's a whole lot different. The way they do things and the pressure that's put upon them versus an SEC championship caliber team like Alabama.
We brought up earlier that Greg said Alabama lost to Texas A&M in the latter part of the year this year in Alabama. That was a huge win for A&M. Big loss for Alabama. But we'll see next year, September 14th, Alabama travels to A&M to play. It's probably going to be the biggest game of college football next year. We'll see Menzel's losing one of his big linemen. They're losing a few people. Alabama loses people, but it never, ever seems to affect that school. They're so loaded, and they recruit so well. And do they ever recruit anybody under 240 pounds, 250 pounds? Every kid on that team is a monster.
Again, they're going to be right in position. And don't get us wrong, Notre Dame has a good recruiting class coming in.
Yeah.
If Brian Kelly would stop messing around and just stay put, but that's something different.
That's going to hurt their recruiting class.
Yeah,
Brian Kelly, instead of jumping on the recruiting trail, like most coaches the day after the game, when the season's over, they're out recruiting, he jumped on a train with the Philadelphia and interviewed for the Eagles job.
And then he left the country.
Yeah, then he left the country. They interview Lovie Smith, and they call Brian Kelly back for a second interview. Brian Kelly goes to Philly, leaves Notre Dame after 1 year, leaves them high and dry. That's going to hurt their recruiting. Some of their kids are going to retract and maybe want to go somewhere else. You look at some of these kids from the California area and places like that. They're not going to run there now. They were made promises, and he's gone. So anyways, moving on from that, everybody. We got to move on real quick to a big topic that come up yesterday. For any of you baseball fans, no players elected to the Hall of Fame this year. It's a tragedy in my mind. It's ridiculous. And if they're blaming it on the steroid era, or what was the comment I heard earlier, Greg? Not much went on in the 90s. Are you out of your mind? Not much went on. How many records were broken? How many guys? I mean, let's start with Roger Clemens. What did Roger Clemens do through the 90s? Let me rephrase that for you, Greg. What didn't Roger Clemens do through the 90s? How many Cy Youngs? How many pitch?
7.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, here's where I fall. And I know that you and I maybe differ on this a little bit. As you go through baseball history and you look at different periods of time, there were certain things that went on, whether it was race, whether it was greenies, whether it was, the fact that, certain people only played against certain talent, whether it was steroids, whatever it was. And everything's been recorded. We're now in an age where public opinion is a lot. For those who don't know, for the Hall of Fame voters, it's basically like sports writers and people that cover the game that are well respected. There's 569 voters vote pretty much every year, and it varies by 1 or 2 every single year. And they were all asked not to talk about who they were going to vote for until the votes came out. And to actually get into the Hall of Fame, you need 75% of the votes. The problem that I have with the Hall of Fame and the way they vote and the sports writers is because not only do you have to be a good baseball player, you also have to appease these people that write about you day in, day out. Now, I understand from the standpoint of, you may want to do that to keep it honest, but if someone doesn't give someone a story, if someone doesn't do a certain thing, maybe there's going to be an undue bias unbeknownst to the numbers that keeps them out. Because let's be honest, after you've retired for 5 years, your numbers are not going to get better. You either have Hall of Fame talent or you don't. And I prefer to go by the method of, when you hear that person's name, what's the first thing that you think? If you don't think Hall of Fame, then maybe they shouldn't be in there.
Right.
But what these writers are doing is they're saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, he's probably going to get into the Hall of Fame with these numbers, but he's not a, quote, first ballot Hall of Famer. And the problem that I have with that is that a lot of these guys never played the game at a high professional level.
Nope.
They're making that determination based on not only the play on the field, but the relationship and how that person impacted the game. So for some point, I get that. And yes, they are more knowledgeable because they cover the sport. But I do not like the fact that they can just vote willy-nilly and not even give a reason as for why they didn't vote for someone.
Seems a lot like personal opinion. Seems a lot like there's no format
Like
to
how
their voting.
It seems like a lot like how they used to get national champions in college football.
Well, I mean, if they're one of their biggest reasons was the steroid era, and at the same time, these same people you're talking about right now were the ones in the 90s when McGuire and Sosa. Let me use them two for examples. I used Clemens earlier. Were hitting the ball out of every park they stepped into. Do you know people that didn't even like the team they played on went and watched them play at their home field or an away field just to see these monsters hit the ball at the park? Ticket sales went up in these half-empty or less than half-empty ballparks. TV viewers, there was more viewers on TV to watch these guys hit. That was the best home run derby I ever seen with them two. So they bring people back to a stagnant sport. Because baseball with 162, 163 games by July, August, man, you're kind of like, to sit there and watch a 3-hour game, you get a little exhausted. These guys brought people back to watching it. They were happy with that. They were excited about that. They were writing about that.
Right.
Now, you're saying, I'm not going to put you in the Hall of Fame. Your numbers are good, but you know what? You did something, and we don't approve of it, so we're not putting you in.
Let me ask you this.
They put a label on it, the steroid era.
Do you think that maybe they are trying to recorrect themselves because of just what you said? Baseball was dead. It was coming off a stoppage, and they needed something to inject.
You can't recorrect yourself by keeping these guys out of the Hall of Fame.
Right, but hear me out. They needed something, because here's the thing. For all the power that these baseball players have, sports writers have for putting people in the Hall of Fame, they also have a responsibility, according to them, to cover the sport honestly and thoroughly. And they knew. They looked at the numbers. There's no way that they could look themselves in the eye and say, something's not up, and we are just not going to. Do you think they got all swept up in it and then turned around later and said, hey, you know what? I didn't do my job. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't cover. I didn't ask the hard questions. And now, because of this, there's a steroid era. Maybe if I, as a baseball writer, one of 569, had said something earlier, maybe this would have stopped. And do you think that maybe they're putting that into it? And I think
can't. They can't, because they're the ones that labeled it. They shouldn't.
Okay.
Because they're the ones that labeled it. They were the original ones to label it steroid era. When they did that, when that started, it hindered these guys' chances from the word go. And it shouldn't have. It should not have. Do you know, like we said Roger Clemens earlier, okay?
Never convicted. Never convicted. Never found guilty. Never failed a drug test. And you're telling me a stand-up guy in the community, never in no legal trouble up until that point, which nothing was proven, with 7 Cy Youngs, was the best pitcher for every team that he went to, can't be a first ballot Hall of Famer? What does it take then? What's the format? Because if he can't make it, how is Jeter going to make it? What's the criteria? When Babe Ruth, Cal Ripken, they weren't 100% voted in. I mean, that tells you how ridiculous this is. And and don't get me wrong, this is an indictment against the Hall of Fame voters, but it is, because I don't trust them. And you can't tell me, if you can't tell me what the criteria is, and you vote on someone after 5 years, and after those 5 years, the numbers don't change. The only thing that changes is who you let in. Is Greg Maddux, who's coming in next year, going to be a writer? Going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? Or does someone want to make a point?
What about a Chipper Jones? What about any of them guys, for that matter? But we talked about Clemens. We talked about Sosa. We talked about McGuire. They're both in the 700 club. We talked about. We didn't bring up what's his face from San Fran.
Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds, another one in the 700 club. Okay, if they got these numbers and they can't get in, what does it take? So should every player think I have no chance as a first ballot, no matter how good I was? We're talking about Jeters. We're talking about
Okay, well let's ask this question, impromptu. Who's a first ballot Hall of Famer that gets in when they're up? Right now.
I've said Jeter 4 or 5 times.
So Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr.
You got to look
Mariano Rivera?
Rivera's got to go in.
What? Has to or should?
He should. Well, we can't say have to because we don't know what the voters are going to think at the time.
He, aside from another person who didn't get in, Curt Schilling, who has possibly the greatest strikeout to walk ratio ever, the greatest postseason record ever, the greatest gutsy. He has rings. He has everything, and they won't let him in?
Yep. And, well, then what are you going to do?
Only broke 38%?
Yep. So
what's it going to take? And if everybody agrees Maddox is supposed to be in, then you look at his career and Schilling dwarfs him in postseason
he couldn't
play.
get in. And you know what? So let's go to a Josh Hamilton for a minute when his time comes up now, and he's going to hit a lot more home runs for his time's up.
Depends.
He just needs to go ahead and accept the fact he can't be it. If he
depends how nice he was to the press. Depends if he did stupid dinners. Depends if he went to the hospitals. Barry Bonds was not a likable figure for a very long time. We all know that. At the same time, he was the greatest hitter that anyone has ever seen since baseball started. Right now, did he get mixed up in steroids? Yeah, but you know what? There are a whole bunch of other hitters that didn't have to play against certain type of people, or only played against people that were on greenies, or only played in the cocaine era. And no, there's no asterisk with that. And I understand if the point is, hey, you know what? Let's put a stop to it. Let's clean it up. Do that. Fine. But you can't erase what they did. So you got to put in the Hall of Fame, even if it's in a wing that's like the should have done better wing, or the whatever wing, or call it the chicken wing. Whatever you want to call it. You want to put him in there, but put him in there.
Put these guys, your Clemens, Clemens was never proven to anything, so he can't be a part of that. But you put your McGuire, you put your Sosas, you put your Bonds, you put them in because they got in. They had the numbers to do it. If you want, and I don't think they'll mind, put an asterisk by their name. Put them in there, put a big asterisk by their name. I'm sure they won't mind. They did what they did. They admitted to it.
Nobody cares.
Nobody else cares. Right. So is it safe to say, before we get off this topic, we're not, the both of us, neither one of us are saying we agree or disagree. We don't have a format to say we agree or disagree. We haven't seen nothing that says why they do or why they don't. So I mean, we disagree with what they've done here, but to disagree with how people get in or not, we haven't seen anything on it.
I'll say two last things. One, and here are my two problems. The first problem is I dislike how there's no criteria for how they vote for anybody.
I agree.
And then I also think when you're looking at obvious Hall of Fame players as it relates to the history of baseball, I don't understand, and no one has explained to me why they haven't been in now. If the whole point of that is to, quote, make them wait because that's the baseball way or whatever, I think that's garbage.
I agree. I agree totally. Moving back into some football news real quick. Today, the Jags, with their new GM, they fired Malarkey. They haven't got a coach in place. They've looked at a couple. Schottenheimer, Greg Romans from San Fran. His name keeps floating around, and to me, I think he's going to be a great head coach somewhere. He's done great with San Fran as an assistant, and he's going to do real good somewhere. But also, the GM come on in an interview today and said there will be no Tim Tebow here in Jacksonville.
And there shouldn't be. That's because that's a football decision. And don't get me wrong. I think Tebow's been pushed around more than anybody else, and I honestly do not even like talking about a backup quarterback that never even saw the field. That's like us talking about Webb from Minnesota. But because Tebow is a national thing and he's partial to the South, there were reports at the end of the season that it was 95% that he was going
with the other GM
that he was going to Jacksonville. They switched GMs on Tuesday. It's Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's when they fire Malarkey. Then they come out with, we're not going to have Tebow here. Right. They're looking to develop Blaine Gabbert or move him.
More moving. And you said that I agree with you about Tebow. How much do we hear about a third-string quarterback? How much talk? How much chatter?
Oh, yeah, he is. A good point. He is a third-string quarterback.
Right. And the thing is down here where we're at, he's a borderline god to everybody. The guy cannot ever play again, and they'll sit here and tell you he should be a starter somewhere because he's a winner. He's a winner. Well, you know what? The NFL doesn't go by, he was a winner, he's a winner. They go by, prove to me you can throw that ball down the field. This is a passing league, and then we'll talk. Two, he might have a few fans in Denver. I'm sure he made some. He probably got a few fans in New York. I don't know if he really does there or not because I think they were exhausted with him from the word go. To be totally honest with you, knowing how New Yorkers are.
I'm tired of them.
So,
and I live in New York.
That's news from the Jags camp. News out of the Browns camp today. Cleveland Browns interviewing Wisenhunt. Looking at Wisenhunt to step in and take over for him. Another one and done.
Well, I'm surprised. I'm surprised Wisenhunt even survived college because he did terrible.
and he had a little stint there with Arizona for a little bit, but But
look at they fired all these coaches, but look at the talent that's actually available from a coaching standpoint that you could actually trust. Yeah, everybody's talking about Chip Kelly, Brian Kelly, but they haven't spent time in the head coach position, especially Chip. Now, Brian, he's had a lot of success.
Yep.
But again, are you going to let him run your franchise, top to bottom, soup to nuts? No, you're not. You're going to make him be the de facto, like someone for the Cleveland Browns. Like, a couple of weeks ago, you and I were talking about Joe Banner, who used to be the executive vice president for Philadelphia, who put everybody in place for Andy Reid to do great.
Yeah.
If he's in Cleveland, when Chip Kelly went up there, Chip Kelly's going to be a cog in the wheel. He's not going to be like the main deal, and I think that's what he was thinking because that's what he has aside from the AD in Oregon.
Right.
And Brian Kelly, and who's, here's the other part. I don't know who's angling for a bigger check or just trying to test the waters or just trying to see what it's like to be coveted by an NFL team. You look at Lovie Smith. He gets offered Tennessee job. Everybody's talking to him about it. And all of a sudden, he gets a little bonus.
Yep.
And it happens all the time. So I'm just wondering.
Now he just interviewed with Philly too.
And it's tough for me to really understand these coaches' motives, especially when they go out and they recruit and they sign these kids. The kids don't have the outs that these coaches have. The kid commits, he commits, and if he doesn't, he loses a scholarship. And this is a whole nother conversation that I'm passionate about, but we can talk about that another time.
Well,
but the kid doesn't get the opportunity to move.
We moving on in the NFL. I agree with you. That's another conversation. It's one and done with coaches. We know where the one and done is big college basketball. It can't be done in college football, but for some reason in college football, it's huge with these coaches. But do you blame the coaches when in the NFL or in college? How many coaches are we seeing? This ain't like the olden days where coaches would have 10, 5, 10, and 12-year stints. They don't have that no more. Nope. They're getting fired after a year.
Yep.
If they got an opportunity to go somewhere better, make more money, do whatever, I would go myself. You don't know if you turn that down if you get fired next year. Well, anyways, moving on. Look at Dallas. They just get rid of Rob Ryan. Rob Ryan, who I up until this year, he had a bad year. Defense still played really well for him. I'm not going to say they were a bad defensive squad. He's always had good defenses. He gets fired, and now they're bringing in Monty Kiffin from USC. Monty Kiffin.
Look, you look at the job that Rob Ryan did. He inherited a team that was 31st in defense proficiency, and he got them, I believe, to like 17th in rushing and 21st in passing, all while he missed 5 starters and a 6 in the nickel package. He's been decimated all year. If you listen to Jerry Jones, he cites Chicago and Seattle, which at the time were teams playing good. And yes, they didn't have their full squad, and yes, they maybe should have done better. But you can't tell me. I know Rob Ryan is not Mr. Corporate USA. Jerry Jones about a week and a half ago promised that everybody was going to be, uncomfortable in Happy Valley in the $1.2 billion playhouse. As it ends up, he maybe fired the most valuable coach that he has on staff because it's not Jason Garrett because he's a freaking puppet.
What was he looking at when he fired him? When he sat down and made the decision to fire Rob Ryan? Okay, I understand fresh blood. I understand the whole we're going to clean house. We're going to do this. He hasn't cleaned house. He hasn't done anything. Yes, offensive coordinator's gone. Defensive coordinator's gone. You keep Garrett in place. Now you're bringing in Kiffin. I don't see Norv Turner going there to be an offensive coordinator.
I've been fired exactly. I've been encouraged to leave my job of employment exactly 2 times, and I've had to do it 10. I've had to fire people. And what I know is when you start citing or hear people reciting specific instances to get you out, that means that they've been planning to do it.
Yes.
When you say to someone, hey, you know what, your overall performance, we just can't get to it, then that's, hey, you know what, you weren't good. We noticed you weren't good. We noticed that you were slowing us down. Not that we specifically want you out. And when you heard Jerry Jones talk about that, he pointed to 2 specific instances.
He was looking for reasons.
Because he knows his overall reasoning of, hey, I just don't like you, doesn't fit because the boy gets stuff done. And his defense was decimated.
And both of those games, I mean, look at Seattle. I'm going to say it because I really believe in it. Their ground and pound game.
Yep.
My God, is it tough. You were worried about you couldn't stop them? Nobody's really been able to stop them. Okay, the Giants did it and were able to win, but they didn't stop them. Nope. They just outscored them. So I think that was a big mistake. Another big mistake in the chapter of Jerry Jones. He's forever jumping ship, in my mind, a little too early. But he hangs on to the 2 guys that I thought he should have got rid of a few years ago. He still has them today, and he says he's staying loyal to them.
Well, let me ask you this.
Where is his loyalty? I think his loyalty radar's messed up.
His loyalty to Jason Garrett and Tony Romo because he picked them, and that's what he's rolling with. But let me ask you this. When Jerry Jones said a couple weeks ago, 10 days, whatever it was, that, there's going to be some uncomfortable people, in Dallas, everyone sort of blew it off.
Yep.
Now that he's gotten rid of Rob Ryan, does Jason Garrett have to be worried?
I don't think Jason Garrett has to be worried this year. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day when they were talking about Norv Turner as the offensive coordinator. I said, there's a little ground for Jason Garrett to get worried. Norv Turner is not going to come in as an OC to Jason Garrett. I can tell you right now. I don't care if he's calling his own plays and he gets paid a little more. He's not going to do it. With that in mind, my first thought was Norv Turner could be the new head coach in Dallas.
But what's the difference between when Jason Garrett was offensive coordinator and Wade Phillips was hired, and they basically shoved Jason Garrett down Wade Phillips' throat and said, if you want to coach here, we know you're a defensive guy. You're going to have to take this offensive coordinator.
Yeah, but you're talking about Jason Garrett being the OC and doing that.
And they paid him a lot of money.
You're not going to see Norv Turner do that.
You're not going to see Norv do what?
Be the offensive coordinator and play the head coach role by calling the plays and doing that. Nah, Jerry Jones is not going to. If he does that, then he's going to have.
Norv Turner should have been looking for a job 3 years ago.
If they do
and
that,
everybody knows it.
If they do that, they're in turmoil again next year.
What if Jerry Jones says, hey, you know what? All you got to do is wait. Yeah, I'm going to give him 2 years. All you got to do is wait this out. If he does good, then you'll have a resume where you can get a new head job anywhere you want because it'll show that you're back on top. If he doesn't do good in the next 2 years, then you got the job.
But Jerry Jones' track record, can you see that scenario playing out?
Can you predict what Jerry Jones is going to do?
No, I agree. Let's move on from Jerry Jones real quick. One last quick football news for all you Pittsburgh fans and Florida Gator fans. Chris Rainey, if you hadn't heard it, arrested today in Florida on battery charges, slapping his girlfriend in the face. Rookie in the NFL, under the bright lights, big money, and how many times do we hear this? Over and over and over.
I really don't even want to give this topic too much time, but another stupid player doing stupid things. Obviously, I don't know the extent of it, but let's go through the what has to happen to get arrested. 1, you have to show up where you're not wanted. 2, you have to commit an act. 3, someone has to call that in. 4, you're still there. 5, you argue, and then 6, you go to jail. I understand, and under Urban Meyer, that's how it was. 34 felonies in the time that he was here in terms of players being arrested. But Chris Rainey, you know better. You've been in Pittsburgh. You saw what happened to Ben Roethlisberger.
Yep.
He was the franchise, and they almost sent him packing. What makes you think, with your 240 pound body running through the line, pretty much being a scat bag, a fancy boy in a meat and potatoes offense, what makes you think you can do that and still stay employed? Well, if you didn't know, you know now.
You're going to find out. You're going to find out. Stupid error on his part, but you know the people down here in Florida, they loved him. They're going to love him. It's that Gator fan base. It's the way it goes. Hey, anyways, moving on from news, we want to get right into divisional talk for this weekend. Some big games coming up. I think they deserve some attention. And the first thing I want to get right into Saturday's first game at 4:30. Greg, we got Baltimore going into Denver. Going to Mile High. Baltimore coming off a big win last week against Indianapolis at home, 24-9. Ray Lewis's last time he's going to play in Baltimore. Big win. Crowd sent him out good. All the hoopla is over. They're going into Denver to meet Peyton Manning. Denver's got a stout defense. We know that. Baltimore's got a good defense. I really don't know who I give the better defense to in that. And I'll tell you, you might think it's crazy, but I'm going to say Denver right now. I think Denver has the better defense, and you got Peyton Manning sitting back there, controlling the offense, which he's done very well at this year. Denver has home field throughout as long as they win. I still think this is a very close game to call, i.e., there's too many variables. Too many variables to call a winner in this game. What do you think?
I go back to what I've always said about Peyton Manning. And let me preface this with, I've seen him from a New England fan's point of view. Peyton Manning might actually be the most successful regular season quarterback that ever lived.
Yep.
And the fact that he came back from 4 neck surgeries and is still rolling strong, popping back up. Everyone had questions about his arm strength early. It's a lot better now. You may have Dumerville as the Defensive Player of the Year in Bronco and for the Broncos right now. But when we look at Peyton Manning in the playoffs, he's less than 50%. We look at the streak that he's on, that it gets a lot of highlights. They put it on Sports Center. Everyone's beating their chest. Peyton Manning. But
you think he's on a mission this year? He's got something.
He's on a mission, but who did he play?
Well, I understand.
He played San Diego twice. No one believes in them. He played the Raiders twice. No one believes in them. He played Oakland twice.
He beat Baltimore on December.
No one believes in them.
He beat Baltimore on December 16th, 34-17.
Then they beat Cleveland, Cincinnati before they were good. I mean, I get what you're saying. They even beat Baltimore, and I get what you're saying. From a Baltimore standpoint, I mean, first, so just to say that, I don't really trust Peyton Manning in the playoffs just yet. If he gets this win, then maybe he might win me. But the regular season,
hard to say you don't trust him. I mean, he's pulled things out.
Okay, what happened when we trusted him before the neck injuries in all the playoffs? What happened then? Everyone trusted him going in, and what happened? He came up short.
Yeah. Well, you know what? He was playing against a New England every time he turned around.
Hey.
Don't compare New England to Baltimore. There's no comparison.
So did his brother.
He's in Mile High.
So did his brother.
Yeah, well, that's
right.
Okay?
Right.
I think Eli's had a lot better team than Peyton ever was with Indianapolis. I really believe that.
Okay.
Especially on the defensive side of the football.
Okay, who makes their teammates better? Who makes their teammates better? Peyton Manning or Eli Manning?
I think Peyton does.
Okay, and do you think when he makes them better, they are not as good as or better than Eli's teammates as a unit?
Not as good as.
Unit?
Not as good as.
Offensively, not defensively.
Not as good as. Giants have a better offense, I believe, than Peyton ever had with Reggie Wayne and that whole crew. Here's what I think. First of all, let me start at the top. Harbaugh and John Fox. Who's a better coach? I think John Fox, myself. I'm not a big fan of either one of the Harbaughs. Not that they're not nice people. I don't care for them as coaches in the NFL. I really don't, especially in San Fran. I'm not a fan at all. I'm going to give it to John Fox. Now let's put the two quarterbacks in play. Peyton Manning, Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, Flacco. Flacco's 4-4 on the road in the playoffs in the last 8 road playoff games. He's 4-4. We're calling Peyton Manning 50%. He's playing a 50% quarterback. Who's played in the bigger playoff games? Peyton Manning.
Who's been in the league long enough to do it? Did Peyton Manning ever win his first 5 playoff games?
Peyton Manning didn't step into the situation that Joe Flacco did. Joe Flacco stepped into a lot better situation than Peyton Manning did.
I'm not saying he did,
Peyton
but
Manning
you can't.
Stepped into the same thing Andrew Luck did.
Again, when you look at the numbers, no one cares. I mean, that's great for conversation, but when you really look at it, you got to. If Joe Flacco plays, and to me, it comes down to play calling. If Joe Flacco plays like he did this last week, he's going to have to make those big plays.
Yep.
And it's not with Joe Flacco and the defense that they have, Ray Rice, it's not their running game in total. It comes down to him making big plays of 30 and 40 yards or more. I don't care about the nip and tuck stuff. They can do that rushing.
Well, 34-17 in their last meeting on December 16th. Here's what Baltimore is going to have to do to have any shot at this. Peyton Manning has the ability to not only score, but control the clock, control the ball. Baltimore, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. That will kill you. If you continue to give Peyton Manning the ball back, whether it's 3 and outs or turnovers, he is going to pick you apart. You know this. And Denver's defense, contrary, let's just stop with Peyton Manning for a minute. Denver's defense has stepped up this year and has played well.
Not against any competition.
We're going to find out.
We did find out. They played Atlanta. They lost.
They beat Baltimore up pretty good.
They played Atlanta. They lost. They played Houston. They lost. They played New England. They lost.
Oh, there's 3 scrub teams, right? Them are top teams.
That's my point.
Them are top teams.
Top teams.
Well, okay. They're at home. They have their shot. They're there. They got a chance to, get by Baltimore. You can redeem yourself with New England. New England's going to have to come to town, and right now, from what I've seen out of Tom Brady, good luck with that. That's all I'm going to say.
Who's your pick?
To win the AFC?
To win this game.
Denver. Oh, I mean, there's a lot of hype in this game in the sense that Denver's playing for Peyton Manning. They're playing well. They're excited. A bunch of young kids in that team.
Can Baltimore continue that high and play at that intensity
They're
level?
playing for Ray Lewis now. Ray Lewis has got them guys so
he set it up nice, didn't he?
Oh, you almost think it was scripted, right? That's something I didn't bring up earlier. You think it was scripted, and this guy is still hurt, and he's selling out. He's selling out. You watch him play last week. You know what? It's like his mindset is, what's going to matter if I get hurt?
Right.
What's it going to matter? I'm going to give it all I got. And that's what they're doing. So that's why I made the comment at the beginning of this topic. Very hard game to call. Too many variables. Last game was in Baltimore. Big win for Denver. Actually, it was a 17-point win. I'm going to give it to Denver. I think Denver pulls this one out at home. I really do.
I think. Well, I think if Flacco doesn't get 275 yards and Ray Rice doesn't get 100, I don't think that Denver's going to be able to run on the Broncos like they think they've been able to. I think with Ray Lewis coming in there, the defensive calls, and I think you saw it last week, how they kept touching Andrew Luck. I think there's going to be a big problem with Denver if the actual time of possession is the same. So
right.
It's going to take the Ravens to do that. Ultimately, flat out win. I will pick the Denver Broncos. It's tough though because I think that I don't trust. I know I don't trust Flacco as much as I trust Peyton Manning, regardless of the talent that he's played this year. And don't get me wrong, it's NFL. A professional win's a professional win, and no one goes back and breaks it down, and I get that. But in this case, I do. Even though I really like Baltimore, I have to trust Peyton Manning a little bit more.
Moving on to Saturday night's game, yeah, I think it's a big, big game. It's an 8 o'clock game in San Francisco. Green Bay going to San Fran. If you remember, Greg, they played in Week 1. San Fran beat Green Bay 30-22 in Green Bay. You know, San Fran's had their quarterback change. They've done all that. They've been a little up and down this year. Fairly steady. They lost some games they should have won. They got this Kirkpatrick kid now, who I think's added a little fire to that offense. Not that Smith wasn't playing well, but he was kind of Smith reminds me of an Eli Manning a little bit. Kind of sits back.
15-second answer. Do you think that they should have switched the quarterbacks?
Yeah. No at the time, but it worked out for him. I think Kirkpatrick's a better quarterback simply due to the fact he's averaging 11 yards every time he throws the ball in the last 4 weeks. With that in mind, Rodgers is 6-2 in the playoffs, and look what he's done. Look at last week when everybody came back on offense. Now they've been playing hurt all year. They've had a lot of injuries. Okay,
offense and defense.
Green Bay looked better last week against Minnesota, and I believe it was 24-10 or 24-17 win, whatever it was. They looked really good. They looked like Green Bay. They look like Packer football. Now, they're going back to San Francisco. That's a tough one to call. I think this game could really come down to defense. And if it does, I think San Francisco, by far, has the better defense in this game.
I think San Francisco does have the better defense on paper. I just don't know if they're playing as hot as Green Bay has been trying to play.
And what happens with a hot wild card team?
And not only we saw with the Giants, we saw with the Green Bay Packers when they won their first championship.
8-8.
Where, they're getting some of their players back. They're looking a little bit more sharp. They help Peterson. Now, don't get me wrong. When you take Christian Ponder out and you have Webb in, then they really become a one-dimensional defense. But they stopped Adrian Peterson to 99 yards and took 100 yards off the last time. And, Rodgers was like, keep blitzing us, see what happens. Keep doing it. So from that standpoint, I get where Green Bay might feel a little bit more confident. But also let's look at, Kaepernick. He's been in the main moment. He went up against Seattle. He went up against New England. He had a lot of success. And, he might be the hot player. But, the Justin Smith, he has the same injury Ray Lewis had.
Yep.
So he's not going to be there in perfect form, and that shapes a lot of what they do. Are they still going to have the same defense and get after it? Absolutely, but you know what? Aaron Rodgers is playing at a very high level, and while the defense may not be hot and they might be cooking up to get the snuff, I'll tell you what.
Green Bay's going to run into something they didn't run into earlier this year with San Fran. Kaepernick, if I'm not mistaken, he only played one down in that game.
They're not. Look,
Kaepernick's good. They haven't played him running around like he does.
Do you think Kaepernick can outduel Aaron Rodgers?
No. Outduel him? No. But what I'm saying is,
and he's lucky he's not.
Green Bay doesn't have a very good defense. You know that.
It's getting better though.
Right.
I'm not even saying they're close to peaking.
They're used to defending a run, defending a pass. Now we're throwing a third element at them. Kaepernick. Okay? Now they're going to watch Gore. They're going to watch receivers. And they got to have one person cannot eye Kaepernick. One person is not going to stop that kid. Who's going to catch him? Is what I'm saying. He takes off running. I mean, that could be the deciding factor in this game there.
Let me ask you this: instead of what do you do if you're showing blitz? Instead of blitzing, do you have a spy and then make this kid throw into coverage? Charles Woodson's back. You have a little bit.
Woodson can't catch him.
I'm not talking about catching. I'm talking about playing contain where he doesn't get out. You put a spy on him, so he can't get out on the edge, and then you make him throw it.
How many times this year we've seen him get out on the edge and go? How many times has he had to cut inside the defensive ends and gain 10, 12, 15 yards?
I get it, but
I'm just saying it's a third weapon in that offense. Green Bay, I don't think Green Bay is going to be able to handle that with their defense. They're going to have all they can do to handle Gore and those receivers. I don't think they're going to be able to handle Kaepernick too.
If Green Bay was going to win in a shootout, what would the score have to be? What would Green Bay? They
lost 30-22 in a shootout against Alex Smith in Green Bay. So you could almost reverse that score if that was the case, because they're going to score that many points in two teams. But here's the problem with that. I just said it a minute ago. don't put it past. Kaepernick starts running that ball around and gets them in field goal range, gets them inside the 20, does things like that, gets them better field position to punt the ball further away. So Green Bay's got to, go 90, 98 yards. Things like that are going to make a big difference in this game. Does
San Francisco have to get out to does San Francisco have to be at a spot where they have a 14-point lead and keep it to get off for Green Bay not to get to them? Or are they in trouble if they're only 5 points, 6
If they got a 14-point lead going
14.
into the fourth quarter, they got a shot. But a 14-point lead...
If it's a 3-point lead, like Green Bay caught up to Minnesota, when Minnesota beat them to get in, does San Francisco win that game?
Unless there's a minute left on the clock, I won't count Aaron Rodgers and that crew of receivers he's got out of anything.
So last man who has the ball wins?
In this game, it could be. But the thing that worries me is Kaepernick for that defense, because the point I'm making is this game could be 10 to 14-point lead for San Francisco at any point during this game. At any point. And if that happens, and you're getting into the fourth quarter, I think you're going to see a little steam come. Well, I think you're going to see a little steam come out of their defense. They're not only chasing receivers and backs, they're chasing this quarterback, and he can run.
Well,
so this defense could be out of steam by then.
And here's another thing that we're really not pointing out. When they played in Minnesota, Green Bay, they played in the Dome.
Yep.
And they couldn't stop Adrian Peterson. And everybody knew it was coming. And he did.
Now they're going to a nice weather, nice field, and there we go. That's what I'm trying to. Frank Gore's going to get his. Kaepernick's going to get his. But I tell you what, when it's all said and done, if Green Bay on this high they're on right now wins, I'm not going to be surprised. This is another tough one to call. If I got to sit here and tell you straight up who wins, I'd rather call the point spread. But I'll tell you what, Green Bay goes into San Fran and wins, and I'll tell you why. Those linebackers, Raji on the defensive line, they're going to rattle Kaepernick. They're going to get in his face, and they're going to rattle him, and it's going to affect his passing game. And it's going to turn San Fran into a one-dimensional ball club running the ball, whether it's Kaepernick or Gore.
If San Francisco is down by 7 with 4 minutes, it's down by 14 with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Do you think they make the switch for Alex Smith?
I don't think they switch for Alex Smith unless Kaepernick gets hurt. I think this is a done deal. Kaepernick's in there, and they're going to use him. They know they got more options with him. They have more options with him. We know Smith can't run. We know Smith don't like to get out of that pocket. When he does, he's uncomfortable. He always gets hurt when he's out of that.
He's seen 9 years of defenses coming at him. He's had 7.
I think he's a better quarterback.
He's had at least 7 different offensive coordinators, which means that he's had to plan for people to attack him.
He's the more seasoned quarterback.
7 different ways. I'm just saying he's seen so much.
Well, what would you rather have? Would you rather have his experience and his arm and his proneness to injury, or would you rather have Kaepernick, young, he throws the ball well, very well, and he can run all over the field?
I understand Kaepernick. What I would do, and this is probably why I'm not an NFL coach, is I would put Kaepernick in a position where he would get touches and he would get certain parts of the game where he could actually do something like Tebow was promised in the Jets, and you keep Alex Smith rock steady, the guy that got you to the NFC Championship. Yep. I think you keep that guy at the helm and don't let him lose his job to concussion, because San Francisco moved up to get Kaepernick, so that's their boy.
Well, there's a guy that's going to be on the market when the season's over, Alex Smith.
I'll tell you what, maybe before that, because if he makes it to a certain point, I think next year there's a roster bonus that they got to pay, and I'll tell you what, they ain't trying to pay it.
No, not if they're planning to get rid of him anyway.
That's why they talked to Peyton Manning.
Who wins?
Green Bay.
Green Bay wins. Like I said, I agree with you on Green Bay winning, but they better keep the score close.
It has to be
better
close.
Keep the score close. All right, moving on to Sunday real quick. We've got 2 games left to talk about. Here's one that I'm very intrigued about. 1 o'clock on Sunday. Seattle coming off a big win against Washington, which we're going to touch on this a little bit later. There's a lot to talk about. Horrible field. Was the play calling right? Keeping RG3 and whatever. But Seattle going into Atlanta. Here's my first question that comes to my mind when I think about that. Matty Ryan lose another playoff game. One of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game.
Who?
Matt Ryan right now is
Maybe
playing
in
great.
Atlanta.
And he can't win a playoff game. He can't. Between him and Tony Gonzalez, I don't know what the curse is. I don't know what the black cloud is over their head. They can. The playoffs haunt them. During the regular season, they're so dominant, and then they're haunted in the playoffs. Seattle. Here's why I bring all that up. First of all, right now in the playoffs, as we're speaking, I think the best defense on the field of all the teams in the playoffs right now are the Seattle Seahawks. I think they have the best defense.
Even on the road?
No. We're going to find out. We're going to find out. On the road? Yes! Look what they just did to Washington. Yes, absolutely.
A hurt RG3.
Oh, I don't want to go hurt RG3 nothing. They shut the whole team down. They shut them down. They came from, they got shocked, went down 14 points, and climbed back in the game.
I get it. I'm just saying don't act like they beat, don't act like they beat the Washington Redskins team that rattled off 7 in a row.
Well, here's some things we know. Longwell, who also got hurt in that game for Seattle, their place kicker, hurt his leg, strained the calf, and did whatever. He's not playing because of that crappy field in Washington. What's it going to take for Matt Ryan to win this game? What's it going to take?
What? Here's the problem. Here's the biggest problem that Atlanta faces, which is funny to me because Ryan White has been chirping all year on Twitter about how they don't get any respect, how they're supposed to be great. The fact is that while you may have the best tandem wide receiving core in Roddy White and Julio Jones, you're also going up against two big cornerbacks that don't care, are going to get in your face and be physical. They touch people more than anybody else. And if that's the sole thing that they're waiting on, then they're going to have problems. Now, Seattle has a little bit of problem with Clemens out. He rolled his knee on that shabby field that I can't even believe in the era of player safety that Roger Goodell is creating, that could even be allowed. I can't believe there wasn't an inspection
they ought to have been fighting for that.
Regardless of that, you might say that 2 franchise players actually got hurt. They still have Webster, but I don't know that the Atlanta defense can really stop Marshawn Lynch.
Well, that's just it.
The biggest problem that Atlanta's had all year is they can't stop the run. And their biggest asset is that they have 2 big wide receivers that can get out and, flat out physical someone. Well, that's not going to happen with Sherman and Abraham.
No.
That ain't going to happen.
Not with them corners.
And they're going to get into it all day, and I'll tell you
I'll tell you what, when they catch it, when Atlanta's receivers, Roddy White and them catch this ball, they're going to get hit, and they're going to get hit hard. And you know what that does to the mindset of these receivers. Now, you know how Matt Ryan likes to throw it up high and let them 2 monsters go up and get it.
You can't do that now.
Not now. These guys are just as big, and they're more physical.
And you know what? And they were supposed to be suspended, and they're playing without some money, and they won their appeal, and they're trying to get it.
So here's what I'm saying. Seattle, before we make a pick, Seattle has the better defense, by far, no doubt. Yes, Atlanta, at this moment, has the better quarterback, more seasoned quarterback. I don't know which way to put it. Better or more seasoned? More seasoned.
Atlanta has a perfect situation. They have home field throughout. If they don't make these playoffs, they are the worst team ever, period.
We know Seattle has the better running back.
Yep.
Marshawn Lynch is a beast.
Turner has fresh legs, but
Atlanta knows what's coming. Atlanta knows what's coming. They're going to run Marshawn down their throat, and guess what? When they option that and you go to kill him, don't think Russell Wilson don't take off on you, and he will get it down the field. This is my upset of the weekend. Seattle's going into Atlanta and handed Matt Ryan and Tony Gonzalez another playoff loss. Now,
I don't think that's an upset.
We're saying it's an upset because of record, everything else.
I think it's real sad news for Atlanta. I don't see the only thing that gives me.
Well, Atlanta's picked to win the game.
But the only thing that gives me pause, because they're at home.
Yes.
The only thing that gives me pause, and they've lost big games late. The only thing that gives me pause is the fact that Clemens, their number 1/2 pass rusher, is out. Yep. They can't get after him. But they may be able to scheme better, whatever.
They'll figure that out. It's going to be huge. And with that in mind, I always go back to, we're always messing around gambling and betting and looking up things. Here's the one thing that worries me in that game. How many times is Matt Ryan going to lose before he pulls it off? He's lost. He's gonna win. He's good enough. The team's good enough. He's going to win. But I don't know if this is the time.
Didn't everybody say that about Romo?
Hell. Yeah. I think Matt Ryan's a better clutch quarterback than Romo is.
How could you possibly say that?
I just think he is. I would rather have Ryan than I would
Didn't he
Romo.
get punked out of home 24-2?
Yep, by the Giants.
By your Giants?
Yeah,
How can you tell me?
But there we go. We're talking about a big defense. A defense that come in and shut an offense down. Seattle's going to do that. If Seattle's smart, they looked at game film from that.
Who do you pick?
Seattle.
Yeah, I don't believe in it.
Well, let's talk about your boys then Sunday night at 4:30. At home, Houston coming to town. Didn't we sit down to do a show one night? That game was on. It was a Thursday night game, Monday night game, whatever it was. We were talking about it before we started the show. New England was up something in the neighborhood of 14-0, 17-0, whatever it was.
If I recall, it went from bad to worse.
Oh, ended up being 40-something, 14. I mean, it was huge. Tom Brady. I mean, what are we going to say? I can sum him up, and real quick, we ain't got to say another thing about him. Once in a lifetime. This guy is just a beast. And that offense has so many weapons. How do you cover a team? Every person that leaves the line of scrimmage better be covered. And even when they catch the ball. Gronk, Hernandez. I mean, you want me to keep going through them? I mean,
Welker, Edelman, Lloyd.
Riley, you got Ridley now. You actually got a little bit of a running game. And you know what impressed me the last 2 weeks with New England? They found a way to stop people on defense. They don't typically do that. It's usually a track meet with them. They found a way to stop people on defense. So I'm sorry, folks. If you take one of the top scoring offenses in the league
of all time,
and then you turn around and give them an offense that can stop people, Brandon Spikes and that crew, good luck to you. That's all I got to say. Houston got pounded in the last meeting. They're going to get pounded again this week. J.J. Watts is not going to be a factor. Nobody gets to Brady. When do you see Brady hit the ground?
When he plays the Giants, who are not playing.
Yeah, it's okay, the Giants. So let's New England, you ain't got to worry this year. You get a reprieve. But no, I mean, for real, how often do you see Brady hit the ground? I mean, he's so good. Him and Manning are so good at what they do. They're not nervous. They're not spastic. And I think that's a big reason. So with that in mind, Greg, there's not a whole lot to say about this game. I think, I said Brady he's going to be dominant. Here's who else I think is going to have a really good game for New England. Vince Wilfork. I think he's going to really upset Houston's game plan. He really is. Vince Wilfork, he did last time. He's going to do it again.
That's exactly what he did last time. And, if I told you at the beginning of the season that the Patriots were going to have a top 10 rushing offense, you would have been like, no way. But that's exactly what's happening. They're number 7 right now, rushing about 136 yards per game. They got the top passing attack in the game. And you know what? They're scoring over 33 points a game, which is almost akin to what they were doing when they had Randy Moss and they lost against the Giants for their perfect season. I think, quite simply, the Texans are overmatched. I know. I think I don't believe in Schaub. I don't look when I see Arian Foster. I know that he's the first rushing back to get over 100 yards in his first.
Johnson.
And they have. But after that, I know JJ. Well, you got JJ Watt.
No. I'm staying on the offense. After those 3, who do they got left?
No one that you're really afraid of. And that they have a couple tight ends that pretend to be productive, but nothing that anyone's really.
So New England can gang up on them 3, and that's the end of it.
Who's Arian Foster's backup?
Tate.
Right, I don't know for sure either.
I think it's Tate.
And that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
You don't see that cat, and I just don't know that going from a defensive standpoint, they're even really going to be able to get up for the game because it's not like it's going to be an easy game.
No.
And you know what? You give Belichick 2 weeks. You know, because I'll tell you what, when they were playing Cincinnati, and I'm pretty sure Belichick thought that the Texans were going to win, and when Andy Dalton missed those 2 long passes that Green should have caught if they were thrown correctly, I think right then he started going to work, and he was already putting 80-20 in on Texas, and I don't know that they're ever. And don't get me wrong, Kubiak. Yeah, I mean, if we look at what he used to do, he used to be the Denver quarterback, and you know he was terrible on Tebow Bowl, but he has shown that he can be. Yeah, he was the backup quarterback to Elway. He has shown that he can scheme, but I don't know that he gets past a Belichick on a mission. The Patriots haven't. The Patriots have been shut out by the Giants the last 2 times. They haven't won a game. They haven't won a Super Bowl since Spygate. They want to get that monkey off their back. They're putting up prolific numbers this year. Top among any offensive unit that's been out there in a long time. So I just think that they carry the momentum, and they're looking for a Broncos showdown.
So now you're saying New England wins the game. I'm gonna give my pick, and as soon as you air this tomorrow and it's heard, I'm gonna get a phone call and be told I can't jump ship, or I can't be a bandwagon fan, or something to the nature of I'm coming out of the closet, or I don't know what it's going to be. But I know there's a big New England fan right now in Plattsburgh, New York, who's going to call me when he hears me say, I think that the Patriots win this game. They win it easily, and if they do,
well,
I don't think they go into Denver and have a whole lot of trouble.
I was looking at our listener stats, and it proves that he's one of our smarter fans.
Yeah, he'll be glad to hear that. He's pretty sure he is. But no. It's been a long argument for a long time. But I can guarantee you one thing. He'll be the first one to stand up and tell you he is worried about Peyton Manning, and he's glad the Giants are out of there. You know what? New England wins that game, goes on to the AFC Championship. And right now in the AFC, that's my pick to win the AFC. And I'll tell you what, with San Fran beating them early in the year, Greg, wouldn't that be a nice rematch in the Super Bowl?
I think anybody from the NFC is going to have a problem if the Patriots make it. I think if Denver ends up making it. Even
a Seattle?
Yeah.
Just because New England has too many weapons on offense.
And I think Seattle, it might run into the injury bug. And they already have Clemens down.
Well, there's not an NFC team out there that can get in a track meet with New England. They don't have enough weapons on offense.
Green Bay, but they can't stop anybody.
They can't
stop anybody consistently, and that's the only problem. I would love to see that as a Super Bowl, though.
Well, let's see how our picks turn out.
Brady against, I'd love to see that.
Who's that? Against who?
Brady against Rodgers.
Oh, it'd be a great. But you know what? Rodgers had better have that offense up and going, because I'm tell you right now, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop Brady on defense for nothing. They can't stop nobody. All right, folks, moving on. We hope we helped you with this Saturday and Sunday's divisional championship games. But moving on, we're going to get into a little basketball for you, a little NBA. First thing I want to bring up to you, Greg, Timberwolves.
Oh, sorry.
Timberwolves lose Kevin Love for a while. Out.
Broken hand 4 to 8 weeks.
Big loss.
It hurts. They're top. They are top. If they were to play playoffs right now, they'd be in there. Without Kevin Love, I mean, I don't know what he's scoring, but I know it's over 20. I know he's getting at least 13 boards. There's no way they finish strong. Rubio's back. I get it, but he's not the wheel Kevin Love is. And, they have major problems in terms of expectations, meeting them, and getting to the next level of the playoffs.
And losing him for 4 to 6 weeks is really going to hurt them expectations. Yeah. But, moving on, before we get into our top 3 teams, I disagree. I disagree. I'm bringing this up. Carmelo Anthony's suspension for 1 game tonight.
It should have been 2. You're lucky it's not
Why?
3.
Why? Because he went outside to talk to them? There was no more intent. There was no more intent than that. What was his intent more than KG talking more trash on the court, pushing, grabbing, holding, in his ear steady, and Carmelo wanted to confront him about it?
He gets suspended? That's been going on in the league forever. 1. 2, Carmelo. It's not like Carmelo didn't give it back, and it's not. And 3, it's not like the ref didn't throw them both out at the same time and they kept jawing and they got it. Whether KG said something sensitive to Carmelo that he didn't like or not, whatever, what you can't do in today's NBA, it might be different once David Stern leaves in 14 months or whatever it is and steps down. What you can't do in today's NBA is put yourself in a position where things may or may not escalate. And it's that PC. I think it's garbage. I hate it. But in today's NBA,
so
Carmelo should have gotten 2, if not 3 games. He's lucky that he got 1 based on David Stern. If I'm the commissioner, I go back to the 80s where, hey, somebody goes in the hole, you put him to the ground. There's no flagrant 2. There's only a flagrant. There's no flagrant 1. There's none of that. You jaw, you separate, you let the team figure it out. Yeah. But the fact is, when you go looking for something or someone after the game, at the bus, in today's age where the cameras are everywhere, they got surveillance everywhere, you just can't do that. And you got to get punished for stupidity. That's why only 1 game is lucky. Because David Stern has to say, okay, well, how can I make sure that we're not in this position again so that the next person will think twice about escalating a situation that should be dead?
Well, I still disagree with it. We could go on all day about it.
You disagree with the suspension or the time?
The suspension.
At all?
Yeah, completely. There was nothing done. KG never even came out. Nothing was done. Who cares that Carmelo? My God, how many guys have had a fit?
It's PR, man.
How many guys have busted fire extinguisher holders? How many guys have busted this and that? Throwing stuff around. The guy went outside. He was ticked off. He wanted to say what he had to say, and he got suspended. That's crap. That's crap, David Stern, and you know it. Moving on. In the NBA, what we want to talk about this week, we're going to just break down the 3 top teams in the East and the West real quick. I'm a little Carmelo Anthony in my mind. I got 3 guys running for MVP of the league right now, Greg.
I'd love to hear that.
LeBron, Carmelo, and Paul right now are all possible candidates. There's no doubt about it. They all 3 have to be considered. I mean, you got Anthony scored averaging dang near 30 points, 28 points a game, something like that. You got Paul averaging up there. Their assists are way up this year from last year. LeBron's still doing his thing in Miami. I mean, he's still on track. So, I mean, let's see what it comes down to at the end of the year. But all 3 of them guys are in the running. Talking about the Heat, I think they're 23-10, 24-10 right now, whatever they are. They're in the top of the East, still doing what they do best. They got a great, great system in place. They falter from time to time here and there, but for the most part, they're a tough team to beat. They're half a game up on New York in the East. What else you want to say about Miami? I mean, we talk about their lineup. It's
let me start with the problems, and the problems are the same problems that they've had the entire time. The quote big 3 or big 2.5 or big 2.25 people sliding Chris Bosh have been together. Fact is that they don't have anybody big down low.
No,
they don't. If they play in Memphis, where you have a Tebow and Marc Gasol, they're going to get used because they're going to have big problems. And I think that's always going to be the case. They don't have anybody that's going to protect the finesse play of Dwayne Wade. Even though he gets into the hole, he's getting older. He needs to protect himself a little bit more. That's why the Lakers got Ron Artest for Kobe Bryant. You look at Chris Bosh. He's a little bit younger than everybody, and he can play, but you know what? He's not really going to bring you the power play that you need, the intimidation.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have your main player, LeBron James, be your intimidator and facilitate the ball because they're just going to go at him. You look at the bad boys, back in, the old Detroit team. They had John Sally, Lambeer, Rodman. You look at the Lakers, back in Showtime, they had Kurt Rambis. You look at the Boston Celtics. To an extent, McHale was always working down low, but he's the one that tackled Rambis.
Yep.
At all the good teams, you go to San Antonio, you had your Bruce Bowens, Steven Jacksons. I mean, you go to the old teams and you see that they have people to protect the stars that can get it done down low. And I don't see Miami having that. Now, are they going to care?
No.
Because it's a new age of basketball.
And they're doing the run and gun thing. You score, we'll score. Let's see who gets more at the end.
I'll tell you what, if you're not as athletic, and this is only going to last for so long, they got about 2 more years in this. Yeah. Not even that.
And they better start playing defense.
And I'm not saying Dwayne Wade is breaking down, but what I am saying is he ain't as strong as he used to be.
Right.
So from Miami's standpoint, if we're looking at the top 3, yeah, I mean, I think Miami's going to be in the finals. You have New York, Carmelo's playing, but I worry about them getting old late. I mean, they have one of the oldest teams in the NBA. And then, a surprise Indiana, who is, 3 games behind Miami, 2.5 behind New York. But Paul George is coming into his own.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of Roy Hibbert still playing at a high level. He went on the market last year. He ended up signing for big money. I think almost max money in Indiana, gave him a home team discount. So the East, I don't trust Atlanta. Chicago, maybe if Derrick Rose comes back, but then you have a schizophrenic Brooklyn, a Milwaukee you can't trust, and then a Boston that's probably going to climb the rankings. They're 500 now.
I think they're going to fall a little short this year.
No, I think they're just really catching their rhythm now.
7th or 8th team out.
What's that?
At the end of the year, 7th or 8th team.
Boston's going to want to get the 6th, so they don't have to play Miami or New York. That's what Boston's going to want to do. If they have to play,
there's a team running on old legs.
If they have, just like the Knicks, if they have to play Miami or New York in the first round, they're going to have a problem. They got to get the 6th.
Let's talk about the Knicks right now. Half a game back of Miami. They beat Miami twice this year. Once in New York.
Different in the playoffs, man.
Once. Let me explain it to you. They beat them twice, and a combined between the 2 games by 40 points in Miami and in New York. Now we talked about it. We got Anthony Stoudemire's just starting to come off the bench a little. He's coming off an injury. I hope we continue to play him that way because I just think it'll be better for us right now.
Yeah.
And it'll keep him a little fresher. We got Kidd, who's still playing well. Chandler's starting to come around. Chandler's starting to play good basketball. Smith, Felton's having a great year. Last year, and the year before, last year I always said this about him. He looked a little too heavy to me. He's short to begin with, maybe too short. He was a little thick last year, a little doughboyish. This year, he's in great shape. He's controlling things. He's running around. Wallace. What can you say about Wallace?
Well,
Wallace is playing good this year. And Shumpert's coming in as playing point guard for us right now and having a good year.
Shumpert's coming in, and he's going to be a set of fresh legs. You look at Tyson Chandler, as you mentioned before, he's playing at a high level. He's probably has one of the top 3 offensive field goal percentages in the league, nearing 70%. I think he's over 65. And then you also, as you mentioned before, Jason Kidd, who's playing at an unbelievable level. And, Carmelo Anthony, again, the only person who is shooting or who's scoring more than him is Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant is doing it because he has to.
Yep.
Carmelo Anthony is doing it within a system.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest deal with New York right now is they're playing the system. Stoudemire came back. No one's really talking about him. I don't think that it could go even. I don't think it could be even more better than for Stoudemire to come back, coming off the bench. No one's talking about him.
Yep.
You don't have that controversy. And you know what? And just to go back to it, I like New York, the idea of a New York team in basketball doing real well. But everyone said last year when Carmelo got hurt, Jeremy Lin started doing this thing. Carmelo told everybody, especially D'Antoni, put this guy in and let him play. When he came back, they gelled. Everyone said that Carmelo was selfish. He had more assists that year than any year possible. Mm-hmm. You get this year, they get rid of him. They're bringing Felton. They're bringing Jason Kidd.
Yep.
And he's playing in a system with vets that know how to support him. The only problem that I got with them is I don't know if they're going to be able to last. I don't know if they're going to be able to go. Let's say Boston does get the 7th seed, and they play New York. So now you're going to tell me that New York, and if Boston takes them, because Boston's still gritty. They got Sullinger. They got Courtney Lee. They got Jeff Green. They got Jason Terry. You still got Paul Pierce. I mean, Rondo's playing at a high level. They still got some horses, and there are more people on the bench. Thad Mello from Syracuse. I mean, they got some players that can fill lanes and fill positions. If they take them to a 7-game series, and then they have to play someone else and then Miami, I think that's where you're going to see them run out of gas a little bit late.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Just like Boston did last year. Yep. Same thing Boston did.
I think they ran into a LeBron that no one has seen.
No, he was
Game
a beast.
6.
He was a beast.
No one saw that LeBron.
Yeah,
before.
That was an incredible game. Talking about, let's move on to the Atlanta Hawks at 20-13, I believe, 21-13. I'm not sure. The Hawks just endured the worst week of the year. They lost to Detroit by a point. They slipped in the third quarter against the Celtics. I think it was 33-9, something like that. Their defense is they're not playing defense. What can I say about it? They're not playing defense. Atlanta's playing good basketball. They've just fallen off the grid here lately, Greg. They started out good. They were really gelling. The whole team was good, and all of a sudden it looks like these guys haven't played together.
I don't trust Atlanta. I never have, and I never will. They make terrible. You know what?
But to start the season, they didn't have a very good defense. It's just taking this long to see that.
The best personnel decision that they ever messed up was letting Woodson go.
Mike Woodson.
They had him, and they let him go.
That's a question I wanted to ask you. We were talking about New York. Do you think if they continue going the way they are, get into the playoffs, he should be considered for Coach of the Year? What he's doing with New York? I didn't run that by you. I was wanting to ask you. I mean, come on. The season New York's having, he goes from Atlanta to New York. New York gets rid of D'Antoni, bring in Woodson, and now look at the Knicks. They're a half a game back. And the team they're behind, they beat twice by 40 points.
Looking at all the teams, there's nobody that has surpassed expectation like Mike Woodson has if we were to sit here and list all the teams that we got. Looking in the West, looking in the East, I mean, you look at the Clippers, Vin Del Negro, it's not his team, it's Chris Paul's team. You look at Oklahoma City, how couldn't you win with that? Popovich, I mean, he's a candidate every year, but he's still Popovich. Memphis, the same. I mean, they're doing.
But you still got Woodson at the top.
They're still right. That's what I'm saying. And again, just going through all these teams, I don't see anybody that's doing anything remarkable. Everything looks status quo, except for New York.
Well, that's I think Woodson's done. I think he was a good fit in New York. I mentioned earlier about Atlanta. We were talking about him. I thought at the beginning of the season they weren't playing good defense. They were winning games. They were just outscoring teams, and all of a sudden now in the last 5 or 6, 7 games, they're showing that they do not have a very good defense, and it's coming to a head. They can't stop anybody from scoring. They don't look good right now. They look terrible, and they're still 20-13.
Well, I mean, they're on a 4-game losing streak, and yes, they lost to Detroit
and Cleveland,
a fired up Boston, Cleveland without Verjauer. Maybe that's the game he got hurt. They lost to Kevin Loveless, Minnesota. So they're obviously not playing well.
Yeah, they give up 108 points to Minnesota without Love.
The last 3 teams that they beat, which no one would be impressed with, I think, is New Orleans, Indiana, and then I think Cleveland after that. I mean, who really? I mean, when you have that type of track record of not really beating anybody and then losing to some of the same teams that are not top echelon teams in the Eastern Conference, I mean, you can't really look at them and feel good about it. And here's the other thing: they got rid of a lot of talent.
Yes, they did.
And I don't know that they really supplanted the new team with the correct tools to really get or really meet to execute the expectations that people were looking for.
Yep. Well, I mean, yeah, you're right, and the personnel they lost, but just to add fuel to the fire, and I hate to do it to you, Atlanta, But you're on a 4-game loss. You're going into Utah tomorrow. That's a possible loss. You could lose to Utah. You're playing the way you are right now with no defense. Washington, you might steal a win there. They're not very good. You're going to lose to Chicago. And then you got Brooklyn back-to-back. You could drop one of those two. I mean, right there puts you're pushing 500 before the middle of this month.
Well, and just to go back to that little streak that you're talking about, they start out on the road with their first loss against Detroit. Boston came to visit them, and then they're on the road against Minnesota, on the road against Cleveland. They have Utah at home, but then they go on the road again to Washington, Chicago, as you mentioned, and then they got a home and home with Brooklyn. I don't see them doing good, and I think Indiana will stay above them. And the sad part is about all of this is that they could lose the next 4 or 5 games, and they'll still be in the 4, 5, 6 range mix. Because nobody trusts Brooklyn. And
well, they better get on the ball because Chicago go ahead of them. Indy's already there. And then, I don't know about a Brooklyn or even a Milwaukee, but you see a Boston jump up in there. Well, Boston will jump up in there.
And it's still early. We're 10 games before the All-Star break. Yep. Thereabouts, depending on the team. So, I mean, they do have some time. But
well, when we move on and talk about the West, Greg, we were talking about this the other day, you and I. We were talking about OKC. I think we both agree that even though they're a half a game back right now of the Clippers, I think in a 7-game series, they're better than the Clippers. The Clippers are playing lights out right now, 28-8. OKC's 27-8. But when we talk about, before we go on to the Clippers, when we talk about OKC, here's something I wrote down just to say it: Westbrook, Durant, Ibaka, Martin, and Perkins. They got beat by the Heat in the championship game last year, and everybody's. Like you said earlier, nobody wanted to play LeBron at that time.
No.
Bottom line. But outside of LeBron, I think their youth cost them the championship. They were young. They come off a really tough series with San Antonio. Really tough series. Okay? Go on. Now you went from a run and gun with them. That's all that San Antonio series was.
Right.
Was who could score the most points. It was a steady 7-game run. Then you turn around, and now you got to go play Miami, who had a break, who was ready to rock and roll. And you know what? Maybe youth hurt him a little. Maybe being tired hurt him a little. But I'm going to tell you right now, you better watch out for OKC this year.
I'm going to tell you what the problem is. I'm going to cut you off. The problem last year was Harden. The only reason why 3 games into the NBA Western Conference semifinals that anybody thought after Game 3 that Oklahoma City was even going to beat San Antonio was a play of Harden.
Yep.
Harden got them out of the hole. He cleaned up Westbrook's mistakes. That's what he did.
And they traded him to Houston.
Right, because they didn't want to play. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that maybe another time, but that wasn't even fair. They gave him an hour to decide on the contract, and they really didn't want him there.
No.
End of the day. They didn't want him there, and they want to make
it big. I'm still baffled by.
Well, they come from the people who run Oklahoma City. Used to be in San Antonio, and they have the theory of build through the draft and don't pay anybody that you can't really afford. Make sure you have solid cap room, so if you need to make a move, you can do it to get quality players.
Yep.
And that's what they did. They got 2 future first-round picks, plus Kevin Martin, who scores the same. Is he a cohesive fit like Harden was? No, he isn't. But at the same time, he can score, and he can defend a little bit better. Westbrook plays his talent a little bit closer to the vest and reduces the turnovers and understands that even though he is the most, in my opinion, the most athletically gifted piece of talent in the NBA at the point guard or shooting guard position, it doesn't mean you need to shoot more than your perennial points leader, number 1 in free throws, Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is a beast, and Westbrook takes shots from him, and that's not good for the team. Kevin Martin still comes in. You have Ibaka. He's had 26 the other day. Perkins doesn't mind doing the dirty work. I mean, and oh yeah, these guys run.
Hey, Greg, how good does the West look this year? I mean, we talked about the East and a couple teams. Only two, in my opinion,
Nobody wants to play anybody in the top three.
But look at the West. We're talking about the Clippers. We're talking about OKC. We're talking about San Antonio, who just looked great the other night. But, you know, talking about the Clippers, Greg, let me run down. I mean, what a roster they got. Griffin. And here's why I want to do it. As much as OKC is really, really exciting to watch, and they are, I love to sit down and watch OKC play basketball. They are so much fun on the court. I think when it comes to the excitement factor of basketball, I don't think there's anybody playing right now more exciting than the Clippers. To watch one of their games is almost like watching an all-star game or a dunk contest or whatever. They run and gun, and they are fun to watch. Griffin, Paul, Odom, Jordan, Billups, and Crawford, and then you don't even talk about Barnes and Hill.
Never mind Bledsoe, Caron Butler, Jamal Crawford.
They got a deep bench. What are they, 6, 7 deep on the bench?
Ronnie Turiaf from the Lakers are always putting good hardcore minutes. Good bench guy, good locker room guy. They go 10, 11 deep, and it's not even fair. You know, Bledsoe is a starter on any other team. Jamal Crawford, you know, I think in the league, with the NBA, you get people who settle into roles. I think that's true with any professional sport.
Yep.
You get some guys in the NFL that, you know, flat out, they're a good quarterback, but they're not a great quarterback, and they're better at filling in different spots, and they get 20 years in the league backing up. I'm not saying that's Jamal Crawford, but when you look at his career, you look at Jason Terry, don't tell me that they couldn't be a Rip Hamilton who plays that style of ball. Crawford can get a shot anywhere he wants. Anywhere he wants. Caron Butler, he just came back, and he's still trying to find his way. But, you know, the boy plays. Lamar Odom, he's averaging about 18 minutes. Yes, he's not doing what he really needs to do in terms of helping the team, but he's facilitating. He's filling in when there's when Chris Paul's not there, and there's small point guard play. But more importantly, you got Chris Paul.
Yeah, who I said earlier I think is considered for MVP of the year and of the league.
When you have Chris Paul, you have a great led team. MVP of the year. I don't see. And I know you hate this argument, but I don't see him doing more for his team than LeBron James does.
He is this year, and so is Carmelo. But
who has more weapons?
Wow.
Right.
Paul does.
Right.
By a ton. Paul can pull him off the bench and do it. But that was my next question to you real quick. You know, the Clippers come off a win last night against Dallas. They beat Dallas last night, 99-93. I believe that was, 13 or 14 wins in a row for the Clippers here lately. So leading up to my question, do you think that puts Vinny in the running for coach of the year? No? Because you said everything's following suit. But following suit, come on. I mean, he's got a 13-game win streak going. They're the top of the division right now.
The Clippers rattled off 17 in a row. Then they stumbled a little bit, and they started picking it back up. But Vinny Del Negro, I mean, he almost lost his job last year. Forget, even be considered coach of anything. And everybody knows.
Right, he almost lost his job. Look where he's at this year.
You know how hard it was for Pat Riley to win Coach of the Year with Magic, Kareem, and Worthy?
Yeah.
What'd you have to do? You had to look good. You had to win the championship, and you had to look good doing it. And I don't know that Vinny Del Negro has those chops, man. I mean, he's not a good coach.
Whew. Boy,
he is a good coach.
This year, they made an awful rebound this year.
Do you think that's okay? Do you think that's more Chris Paul, or do you think that's more Vinny Del Negro? Because I mean, you play basketball. When it's one thing to understand what the plan is, it's another thing to play with people 2 and 3 years, where in practice you know where they're going to be.
Yeah.
And let's also be real. They have a good.
So you wouldn't put Vinny in the running for Coach of the Year?
No.
Wow. Well, we're off on that one. Way off.
Yeah.
Just for the record, folks, I put him in there. My three big horses for the MVP of the year right now in the league are LeBron, our Carmelo and our Paul. But you know what? Here's something that baffles me. We were talking about top 3 teams. We're talking about San Antonio. 1 game back in the West. San Antonio in 3rd place. We don't say that a lot. We're talking about a team that averages 104 points a game, Greg.
I don't even, here's my thing with San Antonio. I don't even judge them until they get to the playoffs.
Right, because you know they're going to get there, and you know they're going to do well.
It's the same thing that everybody did with the New York Giants this year. And some of them fell a little bit short. But you don't judge them until they get to the playoffs, because once they get there, they know what they're doing, and then they play.
They remind me of the Patriots. They're the Patriots of the NBA.
They are one of the few teams that actually spend time, not in the D League, but in the actual league, scout well, develop youth, and then put them in positions to be successful.
Yep. And
they do that at the sacrifice of their elder players who are confident because they're used to the system and trust the system because of the rings that they have on their fingers, to say, hey, you know what? Instead of me playing 34 minutes, I'll acquiesce to playing 26 because this guy needs a little burn. If that means I got to come in late, warm back up, then I'll do it, and that's the deal.
And then,
we were talking you were tweeting me, you were messaging me about the game with Duncan.
Oh, jeez.
When that guy starts to put in work and get in low, good night.
You can't stop him. They tried everything, couldn't stop him. Well, anyway, before we end our show tonight, folks, we've had a little bit of a long show for you tonight. We had a lot to talk about. We missed a week. We had a show set for you tonight, and just a ton come up in the sports world today in news. Just a ton. So we had a lot to talk to you about. Greg, before I finish this tonight, the Lakers. Let's not even worry about how bad they look, how terrible their defense is. The fact that they're 15-20, they've lost the last 5 in a row. D'Antoni, Howard. We know it ain't Nash. We know it ain't Kobe. What's the problem with the Lakers? What's going on over there?
First, it's not a surprise, and I almost think it's a silly question from the standpoint of we knew the answer when they hired D'Antoni. Same reason why New York got rid of him. D'Antoni is a problem, number one, because he doesn't enforce.
They had this problem before D'Antoni.
He doesn't enforce or emphasize defense. Herm Edwards always says, you either coach it or you let it happen. And they're missing so many defensive assignments right now. They're letting so many points get scored in the fourth quarter. Now, I understand Gasol with his knees, Howard with his back, but they played San Antonio shorthanded, and they got gritty, and they came close. 2 3-pointers missed just to tie it up, and they were out of it, but they were that close to being there. Everyone wants to point at Kobe, but, tell me this. If you're in a spot where you're playing reasonably well, and you're trying to get your teammates involved, and they're not pulling their load, they're not doing everything they're supposed to be doing. If you are the scorer on the team, and there have been times where, back in the day before, where no one really cared, where I was a scorer on my team, my coach would say, hey, we're struggling, we need you to score.
Yeah.
And I know that's not...
How many more can Kobe score?
That's not the NBA. He's leading the league right now. Only person over 30. He's got 30.1 points per game. But the fact is, dealing with what he's dealing with, where he may not feel secure that everybody else except for Meta World Peace has heart in the game.
That's it. And he was the last person I expected to do that for this year.
What's he supposed to do? And Nash, and here's the thing. The ball is in Nash's hands, so before everyone says, hey, Kobe, you're doing too much, he's doing less, he's being more proficient, and he's not handling the rock. Yep. So if everybody trusts Nash, if everybody says, hey, we know you're going on 40, but you are 2-time back-to-back MVP, and he's making the pass to Kobe, guess what?
Yeah.
That might be the right decision. And I think people need to get off Kobe's back. Now, but to answer your question, the problem is lack of offensive production from the people that they need it from, and the fact that they miss defensive assignments continuously.
Well, yeah, they don't. You're talking about players on the thing on the floor. Howard.
And it
I'm
looks
tired
bad.
of the Howard talk.
And it looks bad watching it.
All I hear about the Dwight Howard talk is coming out back surgery, now his shoulders are this and that. The Lakers knew that before they got him.
He wasn't supposed to play until
Here's my question for him:
December.
when a trade deadline comes up, they get rid of him.
What do you mean? What trade deadline? There is no trade deadline.
When do they get rid of him by February?
No one's going to pick up his contract.
So you don't think they're going to pick him up by February?
No one. Dwight Howard is on a contract that says at the end of this year he is free to go wherever he wants. The Lakers are not going to be able to trade him because no one is going to. There's no such thing as a sign and trade anymore.
Do you think they
where you can secure a person's contract and then give it to another team to pay? The problem is that nowadays with the new CBA, when he's gone, when his contract's up, it's open to the highest bidder.
Here's the Lakers' problem. I'm looking at their lineup.
They're going to lose Dwight Howard.
Kobe, Dwight, who plays once in a while and not very good. Gasol, who's not playing right now, who should be playing a lot better than he is.
Well, that's the coach's fault.
Nash is 40. Meta World Peace is playing way better this year than I thought he was going to compared to last year.
The last 5 games, I think he's averaging over 18
Meeks, he's a shooting guard, and he hasn't done much this year.
He's a shooting guard.
So, right there in a nutshell tells you that's the problem. They put a team together thinking they were going to do something, and they don't have nothing when you compare them to the lineup of OKC, San Antonio, or the Clippers. They fail in comparison in every aspect outside of Kobe. And I'll tell you what, right now, San Antonio and LA can hang with Kobe.
Well, and I'll tell you what's kind of weird. You look at the Clippers and you look at the Lakers. Starting about 2 years ago, if you look 5 years past, you'd look at the Lakers and say, well, you know what? I know they didn't win this year, but we trust their management.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the Clippers, you say, hey, you know what? I know they got good players that get talent every year, but they're just running to make money. They're not really trying to push for a title.
No.
I don't trust their management. Now, the roles are reversed. I don't trust the younger bust running the team. The way he picked D'Antoni, the way Phil Jackson was ready, and what they're doing by keeping Manny Del Negro, by signing Grant Hill, making sure Caron Butler stays, giving the contract to Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, making sure, bringing in Chris Paul, all that stuff. You're getting a sense that the Clippers are actually giving you a little more structure and a little more belief in the structure that they're putting together right now, more than the Lakers, and to be quite honest with you, more than most of the teams in the league. I'm not saying they're above a Boston. I'm not saying they're above the structure that they got in Indiana. I'm not saying that they're above a San Antonio or Oklahoma City for that matter, but they are in the top of making you actually believe that, hey, you know what? I can trust these guys for a little bit.
They're close to being the bottom of the Western Conference, and if they keep messing around,
they're at least 11th.
Yep.
And they have to do something like go 33-17 the rest of the way just to make.
They can't. They can't do it.
Just to make the last seed projected?
They won't this year. They can't do it. And that's going to be huge. What happens at the end of this season? You brought all these guys in. You look for
Lakers make the playoffs?
No. Absolutely not.
Not at all.
No, I don't think they make it at all. Well, look, folks, before we close our show out this evening, we want to go ahead and thank you for joining us again. We want to apologize for last week's little glitch. We fixed the problem. No big deal. Hey, join us next week again on the Thursday War Room. We want to let you know we will be going through a name change here real shortly. We'll keep you up to date on that. Also, there's a lot of things getting ready to happen in sports. Baseball's starting spring training here shortly. They're starting to get things going. Also, NASCAR started in Daytona. They got some practice going on. They got some testing going on. We'll keep you up to date on all that.
The Australian Open is coming up, too, I think January 13th. But Rafael Nadal is out. But that's all I really know about it.
Yep, don't worry, folks. We'll keep you up to date on everything. And we'll keep this rolling for you. So from Larry B., and Greg,
we
want to thank you for joining the War Room, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Have a good night.